All right, here we go again, reading from Identities and Inequalities, exploring the intersection of race, class, gender, and sexuality. Chapter 6, which is Inequalities in Economics and Work. Yesterday, this was pretty interesting. Let's see what we got today. Even though economic growth in developing countries has been increasing in the number of people living in extreme poverty has dropped in the past 30 years, global imbalances will continue to exist for the foreseeable future. Okay, so basically, to recap what we were talking about yesterday, the average per capita yearly income in Western Europe, the United States, Canada, Japan, and other developed countries is $43,409. In less developed countries of the world, is $9,840. By conservative estimates, more than 1.3 billion people in the less developed world live on the equivalent of less than $1.25 a day. At the other end of the spectrum, since 2008, the wealth of the world's billionaires has increased by 2.5 billion a day, while the poorest half of all humanity saw their wealth decline by 11%. So, as I was saying before, the elites are trying to stamp out the middle class and put everybody in a position of poverty, basically, so that you're totally dependent on the government and you're never going to get a break. Now, let's see here. Such a depressing conclusion is less a statement about the natural inevitability of equality as it is a reflection of the kinds of choices countries tend to make. Piketty, 2014. Wealthy nations seek to retain their favorite positions while keeping other nations in their place. Ain't that something? In a global economy, such dominance is accomplished by not force, but through financial pressure, as when powerful industrialized countries set world prices on certain goods. As when powerful industrialized countries set world prices on certain goods. Chase, Dunn, and Rubinson, 1977. Because their economic base is weak, poor countries often have to borrow money or buy manufactured goods on credit from wealthy countries. The huge debt they build up locks them into a downward spiral of exploitation and poverty. As a result, they have difficulty developing independent economics of their own and thus remain dependent on wealthy nations for their very survival. Wow. So, how it works. They take and exploit poorer countries by keeping them in a position of servitude. And it's not surprised most of the countries over there in Africa is the ones they're referring to. Matter of fact, all the other countries of all these other places is exactly what they're talking about. That's crazy. That's the financial pressure. As a result, they have difficulty developing independent, economies of their own, depending on wealthy nations for their very survival. Economic equalities made in America. Even if economic equalities between societies were to decline, inequalities within societies would likely persist. It is ironic that a society like ours, which extols the virtues of equality and justice, is also one of the most stratified in the industrialized world. No, it's not ironic. What it is a testament to exactly what type of place this is. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, ProQuest, Statistical Abstract 2020, the average annual income of the top 5% of U.S. households is $250,000 basically, whereas the average annual income of the bottom 20% of households is $25,600. Wow. There's nothing particularly remarkable about that. All societies, no matter how egalitarian, have wealthy people and poor people. However, this wide income gap between the richest and poorest segments of the U.S. population has been growing steadily over the past few decades. Between the 1940s and 1970s, income for all American households, whether rich or poor, grew at fairly similar rates. But since then, things have changed dramatically. Phillips, 2002. The most affluent 20% of American households now account for over half of all the income earned in a given year. And that's crazy. 20% of the people have over half of the income earned. It used to be 43%, now it's over half. They didn't want to tell what the number was because it's probably appalling. Indeed, over the past 4 decades, incomes of the richest 1% of American households have grown 228%. Wow. So that right there is telling us what the deal is. They've been robbing us. 228% worth. During the same time, incomes for the bottom 20% have grown only 26%. So you see the difference. They're growing their money 20 times faster than they're allowing our money to grow. And most of that is probably because they get better interest rates. They get better privileges and opportunities to generate wealth. Whereas regular people, every opportunity to disenfranchise and disadvantage them is taken by the elites to keep them in their place. That's what they feel. Like they need to keep us in our place. That's crazy. Overcoming this trend is not easy. Consider, for instance, periodic efforts to pay low-wage employees higher wages for the work they do. In 2007, after 10 years of debate, Congress finally approved a measure to increase the federal minimum wage from $5.15 an hour to $7.25 an hour, where it remains today. Wow. That was ridiculous. I remember that. I remember when minimum wage was 3 something back in the late 80s, mid 80s. It was 3 something, $3 and some change. I remember it. I was working at Bojangles, my very first job. Compostela Road. Now it's a flooring place. Right in the same parking lot where Giant Open Air Market was. Yeah. $3 and some change, minimum wage. 1992. No. I'm tripping. 89 is when I worked at Bojangles. Or either 88. 88 or 89. Either way. In 2014, the International Monetary Fund, 2014, issued a report calling on the United States to raise its federal minimum wage in order to boost the economy. But Congress had not done that. Instead, social movements such as Fight for $15 have taken responsibility for helping workers at the bottom of the pay scale who seek a living wage of $15 an hour from their employers. Through persistent protests and public relations blitz aimed at voters, politicians and corporations, it has achieved some success. To date, 28 states and more than 40 cities and counties have adopted their own minimum wage laws. And as of late 2018, an estimated 22 million workers had won $68 billion in raises since the Fight for $15 movement began. Raise the minimum wage, 2018. Now, that's ridiculous, because it's the government that's supposed to ensure the welfare of the people. You know what I'm saying? Equality and fairness amongst all. But you see what they doing. 226% for them, 26% for us. Yeah, exactly. When are y'all gonna learn? Okay? The government is not your friend. They're not. So whatever you can get out of them, you better take it. But at the same time, I'm talking the Democratic Party. Because if the Republicans had their way, you wouldn't be getting no $15 an hour for minimum wage. As you see, it's not even through all 50 states yet. What's up with that? Huh? Come on, I thought this was the United States. We got to change the name to the divided states.